Africa 54 Managing Editor Vincent Makori in for Hashtag the U-Word. It's Wednesday, October the 20th. This is Africa 54.
The World Food Programme warns of food aid cuts in Nigeria. An aid agency helps Kenya's returning abused workers reintegrate. And the United Nations sounds the alarm on global warming's impact on Africa.
Ethiopian forces have carried out another airstrike on the capital city of the northern Tigray region Wednesday, just 2 days after an airstrike killed 3 children there. United Nations spokesman Farhan Haq told reporters Tuesday that one other person was killed in the airstrike on the outskirts of Mekelle. Haq says 9 people were wounded in a second airstrike in Mekelle later that day that also damaged a number of houses at a nearby hotel. Haq also says that his UN colleagues are alarmed at the intensification of the conflict and once again reminds all parties involved in the fighting of their obligations under international humanitarian law to protect civilians and civilian infrastructure. The World Food Programme says it urgently needs funds or it may have to cut food rations to more than 500,000 people in Nigeria's conflict-ravaged northeast. David Doyle has the latest.
The World Food Programme says it may be forced to cut food rations to more than 500,000 people in northeastern Nigeria within a matter of weeks. The UN agency is urgently calling for $55 million in the coming weeks for a region that has been hit by years of conflict and where millions have fled an insurgency by militant group Boko Haram. Without additional resources, the WFP says it will run out of funds for emergency food distribution and nutrition support by the end of the month. And WFP spokesperson Thompson Peary said those cuts would be coming as hunger in the area reaches a 5-year high.
This is probably the highest that we're witnessing since the crisis exploded in 2016. Approximately 4.4 million people are facing acute food insecurity in the conflict-affected states of Borno, Adamawa, and Yobe.
Peary said food assistance is already prioritized for those who are most vulnerable. The situation in Nigeria is also being exacerbated by the fallout of the global health crisis, limited food supply, and high prices. The number of internally displaced people hit 2 million last month, and the WFP estimates that more than 1 million children are malnourished.
David Doyle of Reuters filed that report. Now, 1 year after chaos and street violence in Lagos, Nigerian citizens promises of police reform are proving to be hollow. Human rights group Amnesty International says 12 protesters were killed in 2 districts on the night of October 20th, 2020, triggering the worst street unrest since Nigeria returned to civilian rule in 1999. The government has never acknowledged the extent of the violence, but it responded with promises to transform policing, including meeting the demonstrators' demand to shut down the Special Anti-Robbery Squad. Activists held the SARS unit responsible for a campaign of extortion, violence, kidnapping and intimidation, and are concerned over the lack of positive policing progress.
I'm disappointed in the government that has chosen up to date, even after 1 year, not to take any responsibility or work towards the path of taking responsibility on what happened within the country. It's very disappointing to know that we are actually not safe. There is no account on anything, any human's life or property.
NSAS movement did not start last year. The NSAS movement started way back since 2016, where young people have been saying end police brutality and this rogue unit has to be disbanded. But the Nigerian government ignored repeatedly the cries of young people people until it came to a crescendo in 2020, where young people finally decided to come out and protest against this act.
Nigeria has slipped 2 points to 45th out of 100 on the Freedom House Index of World Freedom. The watchdog cities cites extrajudicial killings, torture, and other abuses by military and law enforcement agencies. Human Rights Watch said the hopes for accountability remain inconclusive and bleak. In June, Nigeria banned Twitter after it deleted tweets by President Muhammadu Buhari. Laborers from Kenya say they have endured abuse in the Middle East, often at the hands of their employers. But an aid agency is offering them a chance at rehabilitation and reintegration. Hundreds of survivors of forced labor are now able to access support offered by a group that provides a soft landing for those in need. Brenda Mlinya reports from Nairobi.
Faith Murunga's store on the outskirts of Kenya's capital is barely 6 months old, but it is putting food on her family's table. It isn't what she had anticipated when she left Kenya in 2019 for work in Saudi Arabia, a popular work destination for those unable to find jobs in Kenya. She says what she was promised as she emigrated and what she found there were worlds apart.
But baba alikuja akaniambia, bora nimepanda ndege nimeenda kwao.
The boss came and told me that as long as I agreed to travel to their country, I must do each and every chore. I would not have the right to complain. They had paid a lot of money to buy me. I was therefore their property.
During her 2 years of service in Saudi Arabia, she suffered both emotional and physical abuse at the hands of her employer until a Good Samaritan came to her aid and facilitated her return to Kenya, where she received help from Heart Kenya, an organization that fights human trafficking and helps people like Faith. Since Heart Kenya was formed in 2010, the organization has helped more than 700 survivors of forced labor who have come home scarred. Masia Tieno, the organization's outreach programs manager, said the survivors, 80% of them women, have varying degrees of trauma when they seek their help.
When a survivor comes to us, they're actually they're distressed. Some of them appear confused. They don't know what to do next. And you find someone who does not know where to start. They do not have a house. They don't want to go back home because everyone knows they went abroad. So they're expecting that they will come with something.
The organization takes in survivors of forced labor and other work-related abuses and helps them rebuild their lives through counseling, training, and supporting their ability to make a living.
This process is actually a very participatory process where it's the case worker and the survivor chatting ways into which they are going to work together for proper rehabilitation. So the survivor has a voice, and they can actually say no to a service because our services are individualized and they are survivor-centered.
The Kenya Union of Domestic Hotels, Educational Institutions, Hospital and Allied Workers, or KUDEIHA, the union that fights for the rights of workers, says the migration of workers to the Middle East is likely to continue as long as Kenya's 10% unemployment rate stays as high as it is. The union is urging extra caution among those who seek unskilled work abroad.
Seek for proper information. Consult widely. And before you go, get it right. Don't go where you can see black spots.
Heart Kenya's leadership says it is ready to handle cases like Faith's as they appear. For now, Faith is grateful for another chance at life, away from the abuse she suffered in a foreign land. Brenda Mlinya for VOA News, Nairobi.
Ahead of the COP26 climate conference, a report is warning of the dire consequences for Africa from global warming. The continent's lead negotiator says more money and better tracking of funds is needed. Lucy Fielder has the details.
African countries want more money and a better system of tracking it as they tackle the fallout of a warming planet. That's the message from Africa's lead climate negotiator ahead of the COP26 conference starting at the end of the month. In an interview, Tongi Gahuma said countries are failing to hit a $100 billion annual target promised by wealthier nations more than a decade ago. The latest OECD data suggests the funding hit $79.6 billion in 2019, just 2% higher than the year before.
We need to have a clear view, clear roadmap, how they will put on the table the 100 billion per year, how we can track the 100 billion per year. And without that, the COP26 will not be a success for Africa.
That position highlights tensions ahead of COP26 in the UK's Glasgow. The world's 20 richest nations are responsible for 80% of greenhouse gas emissions. But it's developing countries that bear the brunt.
If we prove that someone is responsible for something, it's his responsibility to pay for that, to find a solution for that. And this is the basis of the negotiation.
The continent's precarious position was outlined in a stark report from the World Meteorological Organization on Tuesday. It warned that 118 million extremely poor people, that's those living on less than $1.90 a day, will be exposed to drought, floods and extreme heat by 2030 if an adequate response is not put in place. The continent's fabled glaciers will disappear in 2 decades, the report warned, and climate change could shave up to 3% of Africa's GDP by the middle of the century. Such dire predictions are why Gahuma says African countries are pushing for funding to be scaled up to more than $1 trillion, even though wealthier nations are missing their current target.
The 100 billion was a political commitment. It was not based on the real needs of a developing country to tackle climate change. So the first assessment that we made as African group is that we need 10 times more than the 100 billion. So we are close to 1.3 to 1.2, and this will be maybe the real cost.
And the impact of climate change is already being felt. The WMO report said 2020 was Africa's 3rd warmest year on record. Drought, on a continent that is heavily reliant on agriculture, has been worsening. East and West Africa suffered extensive flooding last year, and a locust infestation of historic proportions wreaks havoc. That's why, as Gahuma prepares to head to the COP26 negotiating table, he has one more message for global powers. We have no time to lose.
That was Lucy Field of Reuters reporting. The Senegalese Navy says it has seized more than 2 tons of pure cocaine from a ship off its Atlantic coast. It is the West African country's largest ever cocaine burst. The cocaine was found on a ship 363 kilometers off the coast by naval forces backed by air support from the French Air Force, according to the Navy. Drug smugglers typically use West Africa as a shipment point for cocaine en route from South America to Europe. In January, authorities in neighboring Gambia seized nearly 3 tons of cocaine from a shipment of industrial salt originating in Ecuador. Morocco police on Monday seized 1 ton and 335 kilograms of cocaine concealed in a container ship in Tangier's port. We're excited to hear what you think about Africa 54. Join the discussion on Facebook. The address is Africa 54. We are also streaming our broadcast live on Facebook. Please watch and share our show with your friends. Also, check out our headlines 24/7 on voaafrica.com. Still to come, the U.S. African Film Festival features more than 100 films from over 30 countries. We'll have a report. But first, Katie Adams tells us what's on tap on Wednesday's edition of Straight Talk Africa.
On the next Straight Talk Africa, we're going to look at the Me Too effect on Africa's women.
Sisterhood! Sisterhood! Hear my voice! Hear my voice!
In recent years, the movement against sexual abuse and harassment has helped bring high-profile figures in Hollywood and global politics to book.
To be a woman is not a crime! To be a woman is not a crime!
But how global and inclusive is the Me Too movement? Is it helping or hurting the fight for women's rights and safety in African countries? We'll also look at the role and space for men in the conversation. So be sure to join me, Haiti Adams, on the next Straight Talk Africa.
Approval of U.S. leadership around the world rebounded during the first 6 months of President Joe Biden's term after a record low in the last year of former President Donald Trump's administration, according to a new Gallup survey of people in nearly 50 countries. VOA White House Bureau Chief Patsy Widakuswara has more.
While he has been plagued by low approval ratings at home in recent weeks, some good news on the global stage for U.S. President Joe Biden. According to a new Gallup report, approval of U.S. leadership has increased from 30% in 2020 to 49% as of August 2021 across 46 countries and territories. The jump is partly driven by the administration's re-engagement with the world.
Even in the first few hours and moments of the Biden administration, Biden was rejoining the Paris Agreement and also stepping back from Trump's decision to withdraw from the World Health Organization. So I think that those olive branches were really promising signs that a lot of allies were looking for.
The 49% approval rating matched the record high during President Barack Obama's first year in office in 2009. The record low, 30%, was under President Donald Trump and was likely due to his foreign policy approach.
We are truly and finally putting America first.
The Gallup report suggests Biden's messaging to the world is getting a more favorable response.
America is back. America is back. Diplomacy is back.
But the messy withdrawal from Afghanistan and the September AUKUS agreement to provide Australia with nuclear-powered submarines, canceling a prior deal with France, were deeply criticized even by U.S. allies.
They feel like they were fed a line. Oh, this is an administration that is going to rejuvenate our alliances. We care about NATO. We care about other people. We care about human rights. And then what's happened? We haven't put our money where our mouth is when it comes to Afghanistan, when it comes to the AUKUS deal with Australia. And that's really caused problems.
Despite the improvement, the U.S. is behind Germany, a country that ranked first among respondents, particularly in Europe, Asia, and the Americas. Patsy Widakuswara, VOA News.
In support of the International Decade for People of African Descent, proclaimed by the United Nations General Assembly resolution to be observed from 2015 to 2024, the most influential people of African descent identifies high achievers of African descent in public and private sectors from all around the globe. Earlier this month, the organization unveiled two global 100 list of most influential people of African descent in the creative industry. Africa 54 technology correspondent Paul Ndiho spoke to Chief Executive Officer Camille Olufobi.
Camille Olufobi, welcome to Africa 54.
Thank you for having me, Paul. It's always good to see you.
Your organization, MIPA, most influential people of African descent, you recently unveiled the class of 2021. Maybe bring us up to speed. What was this all about?
What is unique about this year is that the United Nations declared the International Year for the Creative Economy. So in addition to our standard global 100 under 40 list at the most influential people of African descent, we also unveiled the 100 most influential creatives. So this year we had two lists, the 100 under 40 global list and then the 100 most influential creatives of African descent. And what was, the convergence this year is what really got everyone excited, because we've been working together with the United Nations in support of the International Decade for People of African Descent to celebrate and recognize the contributions, the positive contributions of people of African descent from all over the world.
What does it take to be on this list of the most influential people? Can anybody feature on that list? Can an average Paul feature on that list?
Paul is no longer average to us. When Paul begins to use his influence in the support of people of African descent, to begin to bring your influence to stand up for the human rights and the civil liberties of people of African descent in whatever position that you are in. This is what makes you eligible to be a MIPADian, as we call them.
What kind of criteria do you use to come up with these fascinating people?
For our 100 under 40 list, there are 4 categories, right? So there's politics and governance, business and entrepreneurship, media and culture, which is where you sit, and then we have the humanitarian endeavors. These are the 4 categories that we look at in the 100 under 40.
How can people leverage technology, especially some of these categories that you talked about, to go beyond what they've been able to do?
Technology is an enabler, and what we found is even us being able to pull together, you know, a global community of people of African descent has been powered by technology. Our predecessors did not have access to the technology that we have today. So the connectivity that exists today is because of technology, right? So we're able to pull together this ecosystem of people of African descent, the best and the brightest around the world, enabled by technology. Technology truly is an enabler and building an infrastructure that really connects us. And that's what we are doing at MyPad, to really create an ecosystem that enables us to connect and discover ourselves around the world.
How can young people maybe take advantage of this trend?
The model at MyPad is to showcase excellence. So as a young person, what you see when you see the MyPad global list is it's inspirational. It's an aspirational platform where you are inspired to become the best version of yourself, knowing that one day I too can become, you know, one of the most influential people of African descent. And here's the other very interesting thing about young people is mentorship, reverse mentorship. So a lot of the older generation do not know a lot of the things that you know, with social media and the way technology works today. So not only are you young, but you have information, right, that could support the older generation, right, to key them into what is the cloud solution, right? So now reverse mentoring is a two-way learning process. So that's what I love about, you know, the kind of mentorship that we're able to create for young people, is to connect them to the older generation where they are also bringing something to the table. They're actually teaching the older generation to understand the lingos and the technology that exists today. So yes, for young people, this is a platform to definitely keep an eye on, to be inspired, right, and to connect with mentors and also share your knowledge, because young people are the ones that are changing the world now.
Well, Camille, thank you so much for your time, and keep up the good work.
Thank you, Paul, and definitely looking forward to you being on the list before 2024 or after.
I look forward to it.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Wish you all the best. That was Africa 54 Tech correspondent Paul Ndiho speaking to Camille Olufowobi. You know, the 12th Silicon Valley African Film Festival was recently held in San Jose, California, featuring 116 films from 36 countries. More than half of those were directed by women. As Grace Oyenubi reports, these films are changing visions of Africa.
The festival's founding director, Chike Nwofia, says most films about Africa or Africans impose a foreign perspective that blurs more accurate perceptions and interpretation of the continent and its people.
These foreign lenses and foreign narratives of Africa continue to perpetuate stereotypes of Africa. We want to make sure that the voice, the point of view that is coming across belongs to the people that own the story.
Two directors whose films were screened spoke about the festival's impact on their thinking. Hetiban Hill crafted
America,
a love letter to Brian, Leslie, and Michelle about the quest for justice and equality.
Allow me to like myself, so excuse me if I can't find the breath to sit down and talk to you.
I love this festival. It has set the bar of how I want to present my work. This is the hub for that.
Mahina Mathieu directed Fly. Is about two Haitian friends who flew to Canada after the devastating 2010 earthquake in their country.
Déplacer d'Haïti à venir au Canada, c'est un privilège. C'est un privilège que je vais jamais.
It won documentary short category.
Mes parents de m'avoir offert parce que j'ai accès à des choses auxquelles j'aurais jamais eu accès.
Hollywood in California and United States and the world in general hasn't been that good representing Black people, African people, people of African descent or African diaspora. So I think that this festival brings a new type of lens and narrative that is key to understanding better our communities.
The festival awarded its highest honor, 2021 Cultural Icon, to Hollywood actor and director Tigrai Moini for his dogged commitment to uplifting Africa's image through the creative arts. He has starred in films such as Blood Diamond and the TV series The Shy.
I am beyond thrilled to receive this award today, and for me this is one of those moments where you get to sit back and reflect and give gratitude for being able to do what we do.
He said he hopes the festival
continues to grow and extend and continue to nurture the future generations of African filmmakers.
The need for the festival persists. Founder Warfare says
you can use the arts in general, and in our case films, to really build and weave community. You can use films to provoke thought. You can use films to draw people together into dialogue.
Festival vendors sold colorful jewelry, artwork, and other tangible evidence of the African creativity captured on screen. Grace Oyenubi for VOA News.
Why did you do me so? My lovely Elizabeth.
Well, and that's our show for today. Be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com. From all of us here in Washington, thanks for watching.